Good afternoon. Welcome to a new episode of the Guru Perspective. Today, I want to talk about what happened in the college championship game, and I want to talk about what happened in the NFL. Definitely have to talk about it, no matter if I didn't or not. But yeah, it's been a really good, fun sports weekend. I want to address some of the things that happened recently and want to get into it now. I want to start off by talking about the college championship game. When I first saw it, it looked like it was going to be some competition. Riley Leonard, they went ahead and they went on a couple of fourth downs to keep the drive going. They burned almost 10 minutes off the clock in that first drive, and then they took it into the end zone to make it 7-0 going Notre Dame's way. I thought Marcus Freeman had something cooking there when I saw that. But what I didn't know is the fact that Ohio State was ready for that. They was disappointed that they let that drive go as long as it did, and they wanted to prove that they can do better. And as the game went on, they improved as far as defense and offense stayed explosive. And the game didn't really look close because at halftime it was really looking bad by that time. It was like 21-7. And by that time, Ohio State, proved their dominance. I definitely picked them winning, no disrespect to Notre Dame. I didn't feel like they were soft at all. I felt like they were a pretty physical, good team. I just feel like with the $20 million that Ohio State spent, that it was going to be worth their while when it came to the big game. And I know that the coach, Ryan Day should be definitely ecstatic about that. Yeah, they still lost to Michigan. We still got that. And, those are bragging rights, but there's no bigger bragging right to saying that you're the champion and you're the college football champion of all teams. We won it last year, and it's kind of fitting to see them winning it this year, putting all the money in and all the bread in one basket for this to materialize the way it did. Because the game wasn't even really close to me at one point. And then when it came to the end, I feel like that's when Notre Dame tried to make a game of it. But I want to get in and talk about a little bit of the stat lines that went on. Will Howard looked good. He really stepped his game up going into the playoffs. He had a chip on his shoulder after they lost to, Michigan. I'm going to keep putting that up there with a smile on my face. But, I feel like the hurtful thing was at the end of the day that they ended up being the champions. But I still feel like Will Howard played a phenomenal game. He had 231 yards and he had 2 touchdowns. I was really surprised with the running back, Quinshon Judkins. I thought that they were going to kind of split the load between the two, but he took on all the load. He had 11 carries for 100 yards, and he had 2 scores on the ground, and he had one through the air as well. One of my favorites to watch is Jeremiah Smith, the rookie. He had 5 receptions for 88 yards and a touchdown as well. Riley Leonard had 255 yards and he had 2 scores. And when I told you he had the touchdown on the ground, he had 17 carries for 40 yards and a score. The run game was really non-existent in that game. Ohio State stopped anything they could put up, so Riley Leonard had to be the running back, and he had to get the yards that they needed to win that game. Jordan Grayhouse had 6 receptions for 128 yards, and he had 2 touchdowns as well. It was a really good game to see, and it was good to see the Notre Dame still had some fight in them. And they came back, and it could have got to the point where at the end of the game, if they would have got that stop on 3rd and 11, it's a possibility that they would have kicked the ball off and still gave Notre Dame a chance to take it into overtime. But that definitely didn't materialize that way. That final score was after the field goal being kicked to ice the game. Ohio State 34, Notre Dame 23. And like I said, they're the college football champions. It was well deserved. I feel like in a playoff day, basically put a stamp of approval on their dominance and they didn't look back. And all the money they spent on the offseason was definitely worth its while. So congratulations to, that team, that Crimson team in the Big Ten, the Ohio State Buckeyes. I know a lot of people don't like me saying their names, but hey, I respect them enough to where I feel like I can say their names on this podcast, and it was well deserved. I want to talk about the games that happened to in the NFL. I want to get the sting out of me first, and I want to talk about the Washington Commanders versus the Detroit Lions game. It was a lot of people who looked at this game too and felt like the Jaden Daniels would expose some of the weaknesses we had, and that was basically our defense. And that definitely materialized. When you have 18 guys that are on injured reserve, and then you have two of your best players get injured in that game, then I kind of figured something wasn't going to be there for us. We got into the playoffs 15-2, and I was definitely proud of those guys for that. And it was too many injuries to overcome. And when you look at the game, I give credit where credit is due, and I feel like the Commanders out Detroited Detroit. What I mean by that was we couldn't get the stops on fourth down, and they were very aggressive in the game. Unfortunately, too, for Jared Goff, because I know when you're losing the game like they did, I looked at it and I felt like at first, man, damn, I feel like some of those Jared Goff mistakes are the reason of why we're not winning, but the defense couldn't stop anybody. And then with the guys that was out there, they did what they possibly could. They just couldn't stop them. We have like third string, fourth string guys out there still trying to make a living and help the Lions move on, and that just wasn't the case. Got to give credit where credit is due. Jaden Daniels, to be a rookie, he's on a whole nother level. He played excellent. And what I've noticed the last two games, the Washington Commanders had to play mistake-free football to beat these teams. Because if the Commanders, on the other hand, made these mistakes that the Lions made, I feel like we could have moved on. But there's no excuses. They did exactly what they needed to do at the right time, and that's why we're going home. I was disappointed, and a lot of times when you see a game and as it materializes, you let your emotions get the best of you. Me, I was definitely upset. I was definitely afraid that Jared Goff would have one of these games eventually, but at the same time, he did the best that he can do. And when you look at it, the defense couldn't really do anything to get any stops and to help us neither. Give credit where it's due, man. Commanders are moving on, and they deserved it. It hurts me as a Detroit Lions fan, but we must move on. And me and my co-host of the Guru Sports Session said, don't be disappointed if we don't win it all this year. We seen what happened with the Aiden Hutchinson injury, and then we looked and we started seeing a lot of these other injuries materialize. The Elam McNeils and Pascal and some of the other guys that we had that made our defensive front, it basically put a crutch on it, man. And then you look up and then you had Carlton Davis be injured. You had David Montgomery. It was so many injuries to overcome, and we were still there in the midst of things. I still feel like I'm proud of those guys, and it's nothing that I'm looking back on. I'm not sad. I'm not holding any emotions or anything back because we did the best we could when we can. At first, I know my buddy E-Buck probably thought that I'd just be furious. Yeah, that night I was, but then I was like, man, I can't, be upset and then, point the fingers at anybody. Because if I did, I'd be a hypocrite. Because I look at it and I feel like we both said on the show, if we didn't win this year, if we didn't win it all, don't be worried about it, man. Let's just keep our focus. We're trending in the right direction. This is new to a lot of Detroit Lions fans. You got to understand this too. We all were so used to them losing and being the same Detroit Lions, and then the last 2.5, 3 years that they've been really legit. It is heartbreaking to not see us compete and go as far as we feel like we can go. I feel like we overachieved last season when we won, and we went all the way to the conference championship and almost knocked off the San Francisco 49ers, which we should have. Um, Questionable calls, but then I'm not going, throw my coach under the bus. I still feel like, with that being said, if we handled things and we wasn't as aggressive, it could have been a possibility that we could have been in that Super Bowl. But I can't look back at the past, and I got to focus on now. What we need to worry about now is trying to get that defensive line together, try to get more pass rush to help Aiden Hutchinson. I want to figure out what they're going to do with Darius Smith. And since we're not in it now, and the conference championship is being played next week, I'm looking straight into the draft now. What we're going to do in free agency, what are we going to do towards the draft? What guys are we going to keep, like Carlton Davis, or are we going to move on for some of the guys that's on the team? And that's what I'm focused on now. I'm more or less in the draft mode right now in the free agency mode. But I want to definitely get into that game too, because Jaden Daniels had a really good game, and as a rookie to be this poised and that calm, man, I'm definitely surprised. He had 299 yards and two scores, and Brian Robinson had 15 carries for 77 yards and two touchdowns. De'Ami Brown had six receptions, and he had 98 yards. Jared Goff, on the other hand, had a really mediocre decimal game at best. He had 313 yards for a touchdown and he had three interceptions. He got banged up at one point and he had to go into concussion protocol and they had to make sure he was okay to even get back in this game. Jahmyr Gibbs is Jahmyr Gibbs, and he's always going to have a solid game. He had 14 carries for 105 yards and two touchdowns. And Amon-Ra St. Brown had eight receptions for 137 yards. That final score was the Washington Commanders 45 and the Detroit Lions 31. We needed to play a perfect game on offense to win that game, and those two turnovers definitely didn't help us. But I still don't look at it like it's all Jared Goff's fault. It was everybody's fault in this one. I feel like some of the decision making, even though Jared Goff on two scoring drives where it looked like we were going to go in and score, had those picks, but then the defense couldn't get any stops, so we couldn't do anything we needed to do. This was the nightmare part of the year for us because we kind of figured that with that defense and being injured like it was, something like this would possibly happen. So I'm not really too upset with how it materialized. Yeah, I hated to go home this early, and I wanted to go to that conference championship once again, but hey, we have to move on. We got to focus on what Brad Holmes going to do, and there's already things that materialize right now. And I know a lot of people are upset about it. I want to talk about it. A lot of people were pissed off because they feel like what happened too was they feel like Aaron Glenn and they feel like Ben Johnson tapped out that game and they were focusing on their future coaching endeavors. I told people that's far from the truth, man. I don't believe that, and you shouldn't believe that crap too. You know me, I'm one of those guys that I want to hear the smoke and I want to hear everything people say. I looked at those sites and what people were saying when they said we were the most overrated number one seed, and how the way we play an aggressive nature, Dan Campbell was only going to bite us sooner than later. But a lot of people didn't look at it and feel like how many injuries we had. We had more injuries than any other team combined with those 18. And when those guys got hurt, like Amik Robertson and some of the other players on the team, it was just an unfortunate, error for us. It was like the football god said that this wasn't our year, and I understand that. With those type of injuries that we suffered, that really put a cripple effect on us this year. But with Jaden Daniels and how well those guys played and mixed in with those veteran players and the defense, you even had rookies who got two picks on Jared Goff. I mean, it happens. We got some of these guys locked down already, and we just got to figure out what we're going to do with the rest of the team moving forward. But yeah, I heard all the smoke. A lot of people were pissed off that Ben Johnson went to the Chicago Bears. I want to talk about that. He just signed like yesterday. It wasn't that late after. It was like around afternoon when he got that job. A lot of people felt like that's where he wanted to go all along. I mean, it is what it is. I feel like he did exceptional for us, and now he's an enemy because he's in the division. That was kind of a slap in the face. But at the same time, I can't be mad at that neither. I feel like Dan Campbell took a risk on Ben Johnson as being an offensive coordinator, a new young up and coming offensive coordinator. And he, definitely did his job. He did great things for Detroit. A lot of us were really happy to have him. We have one of the best offenses in the league. And when healthy, Aaron Glenn could be one of the best defensive coordinators in the league. It's just time for that guy to get what he deserves now. I wish him the best of luck only when they're playing other teams, not when they're playing us. But Ben Johnson deserved that opportunity, and I feel like Aaron Glenn eventually will land with the New York Jets. He was a Pro Bowler with that team, and I know he said if they offer that job to him, he would accept. More power to you. It was well deserved from both of you guys. I mean, like I said, Ben Johnson, you're going to be an enemy now, and I don't wish you well at all when you're playing us twice a year. But for Aaron Glenn, I feel like it was well deserved. I still feel like we got an in-house, defensive coordinator in Kelvin Shepard, the linebacker coach. I want to know what we're going to do as far as an offensive coordinator. I hope we can get somebody who can click on all cylinders and give us something that we need desperately. I want to try to get some of them trick plays that we still had. I don't know how much of that will still be in the playbook, but at the end of the day, it's a lot of things that's going on now. And after that loss, I kind of figured people were just licking their chops and waiting to figure out what was going to happen with the Lions. And now that they figured that we lost, they were already ready to eat up and chomp down on our defensive and offensive coordinators. But I want to move on. Detroit, keep your head up, man. Don't even let that fade you because we finally being a really legit team and losing like that. I know it hurts, but still, man, I still feel like we got a good future. We've been talking about that. Me and E-Buck said that 3 weeks ago. So I know he probably looking like, damn, this is a different hue on the show. Yeah, man. Once I licked them wounds and got it over with and then woke up the next day, man, I was like, hey, man, I suffered worse than that before with loss. So, it's a game, man. We got to look at it that way. We still should represent our city and be thankful for the good season that we had. And I hope that there's many more good seasons for us to come. I want to go on to the Texans and the Kansas City Chiefs game. Now, this one was a really crazy game because a lot of people on the Texans side definitely didn't hold their breath. I know Will Anderson Jr. was saying that he wasn't happy at all because he didn't too much care about what was going on and what happened with the play calls or the calls that was being called from the refs. When you seen that play when he went in and he tried to get the sack on Patrick Mahomes, they said that it was roughing the passer. And no, at first, initially, it looked like it was helmet to helmet, but it definitely wasn't. Patrick Mahomes turned around, and I think he more or less hit his shoulder, but I still feel like they looked at it like since it was close to the head, they gave them that penalty. But it was several suspect penalties in that game, and Troy Aikman definitely didn't hide. He told it how it was, and he was feeling some kind of way the way the officials officiated that game. CJ Stroud, he played like he normally do under these circumstances. He had 245 yards. Joe Mixon had 88 yards for a touchdown, and Nico Collins had 5 receptions for 81 yards. Patrick Mahomes had 177 yards with a touchdown. Kareem Hunt had 8 carries for 44 yards in the score. And Travis Kelce had the game that he should have had this whole year while he was on my fantasy team, damn it. He had 7 receptions, 117 yards, and he had a score in this game. That final score was 23-14, and I will talk a little bit more on that when it comes to my stats because at first when they were saying a lot of people are really trying to help Patrick Mahomes get this 3P, I said, nah, I don't believe that whatsoever. That's just, baloney and that's just hogwash and you shouldn't even believe that hype. But then when I started to look into the stats and start seeing some of the things, I said they may have something going on here. I mean, maybe I'm wrong, but I'll let you guys be the ones who figure that out, and I'll definitely get into it shortly. I want to focus on this Ram and Eagles game, and it was a really good game. I feel like the Rams still had a chance to win this game until they didn't. I feel like it was close. When they got that stop, I said, man, maybe they could go in and still pull this game off. I feel like it was a flag on one of the plays that I know Sean McVay wasn't happy about at the end of the game, but the Eagles did what they had to do, and they got the stop when they needed it over in the red zone. Matthew Stafford right now is contemplating what he's going to do his career. He still feel like he got something left in the tank, but as far as the finances go, I don't know if they want to keep him on that high salary at his age over there in Los Angeles. And Cooper Kupp felt like since he was one of the guys as a trade candidate, going into the trade deadline, that he's not even really sure about his future and what's going to happen and what's going to materialize on the Los Angeles organization, just in case you guys didn't know that. Matthew Stafford had 324 yards and he had 2 touchdowns. Kyron Williams played exceptionally well, and it feels bad for me to say it, but it was overshadowed by Saquon Barkley's performance, and I'll get into it. He had 19 carries for 106 yards. Puka Nacua had 6 receptions for 97 yards. Jalen Hurts had 128 yards. It was very decimal, but at the same time, Saquon Barkley, like I said, carried that team on his back for another consecutive week. This has been like almost 3 weeks he carried that team on his back to victory. Saquon Barkley had 26 carries, 205 yards, and two touchdowns. Yes, I said it. He had 205 yards and two scores. Dallas Goedert had four receptions and 56 yards, but it was basically the Saquon Barkley show. That final score was 28 to 22, and the Eagles are moving on to the conference championship. I will get into the conference championship on the NFC and the AFC and who I have picked going to the Super Bowl. This game right here was another unfortunate game. At the beginning of this game with the Baltimore Ravens and the Buffalo Bills, I feel like Lamar Jackson was Lamar Jackson in the whole time with the two losses. He had a fumble and he had an interception. I understood the interception. He was getting pressure on him. If I'm not mistaken, it was either Matt Milano or Von Miller, which I believe it was Matt Milano. He had to throw the ball faster than what he wanted to. And when that happened, it was somebody underneath and they undercut that play. But with the fumble, I was surprised with that one. Yeah, it was slippery out there, but you need to do a better job of protecting the ball. And that still didn't hurt them because at the end of the day, they didn't give up a touchdown. So the crazy part was how it materialized at the end of the game. The end of the game, they had a chance to take it into overtime and still play. But either way, that wouldn't have mattered because when you look at it, if they converted, it still didn't guarantee that they were going to win that game. But it definitely hurt that Mark Andrews missed that play. Mark Andrews didn't catch the pass, and he was so close, man. He bobbled the ball, and then he couldn't get his feet under him. It was a slippery game. I definitely give credit on that as well, but you got to catch those type of balls. You're a professional, and that's what you're getting paid for. Rain, sleet, or snow, I feel like that should have been a catch. That being said, that final score was 27 to 25. Lamar Jackson had 254 yards, two touchdowns, and a pick. And I told you about the fumble. Derrick Henry had 16 carries for 84 yards and a touchdown. And Isaiah Likely was the guy I still feel like if he had an opportunity to pass the ball to, that's who I would have went to. But like I said, Mark Andrews was open. You got to catch that, brother. Isaiah Likely had four receptions for 73 yards and a score. Josh Allen had 127 yards, and James Cook had 67 yards. And what's this kid? Khalil Secure had 67 yards. It was more or less them capitalizing on what happened with, Lamar Jackson with some of those turnovers. And it definitely helped that, you got a big guy like Josh Allen who got some of those touchdowns right there in the red zone. It was actually cool to see him run a couple in and to basically distribute the ball like he did and keep the whole team involved. I know he had the issues and everybody looked at him like at the time with Stephon Diggs, that was like an issue. But when they ended up getting rid of him and some of the veteran players, they wanted to see how that materialized. And at first it didn't go well for the Buffalo Bills. I feel like when Josh Allen adjusted to that and he put the team on his back, and he started distributing the ball to Khalil Secure. And then, he had Cooper, and he had so many guys from Amari Cooper, and, he had the rookie Coleman, and, it was just a lot of guys. He had Kincaid. He didn't mind distributing the ball and picking and choosing who he was going to give the ball to. I think that made him a little bit more free, and he didn't have the pressure of trying to give it to a number one receiver all the time. I feel like he's definitely the MVP this year, definitely after that game and how they won that game. They won it as a team, not as an individual. And I definitely want to see what they're going to do when I talk about the conference championship now. And I want to get into that right now. And I want to talk about the Washington Commanders and the Philadelphia Eagles. They have the Philadelphia Eagles as a 6-point favorite. It was a 6.5-point favorite at the time. And now it went down to 6. It's going to probably go down a little bit more. I'm thinking 5.5, maybe 3.5, because how well the Washington Commanders play, especially on the road. They've been road warriors. They beat Tampa Bay and they beat Detroit. Detroit, the number one seed. So I feel like if Jalen Hurts can play within himself and Saquon Barkley can do what he's been doing as of late, and he can get Devontae Smith AJ Brown in this game without any hassle or any animosity from AJ Brown on how he's not getting the ball and why he's not getting the ball. If they can play within themselves, the Philadelphia Eagles have a really good chance. I will go under the 6 points, but I'll pick the Eagles at home, and I know I shouldn't because this is my second time picking against the Commanders, and they're 2-0. But I feel like with Philly's defense, if they have Quinyon Mitchell and they have all the cornerbacks healthy, it's a chance. But I'm not going to go that high with this game. I'll go 3.5 because I feel like this is a toss-up game. I still feel like with the Eagles and what they put in this summer and just the good, free agents in the draft with Cooper DeJean and Quinyon Mitchell, they have a really good opportunity. But yeah, I will go with them, and I will go slightly with that under on 3.5. I'm not going with that 6. This is the good one right here. The Chiefs and the Buffalo Bills. They got the Chiefs as a 1 point favor at home. That lets you know that this game is definitely crucial. This is time for Josh Allen to really prove himself. He's 3-1 in the regular season, 0-3 in the playoffs. I was telling one of my good friends, Yasser, when he said he didn't trust the Buffalo Bills for whatever reasons. I said, this is a really good team, man. And Josh Allen just seemed like he couldn't get over that hump, which is Patrick Mahomes. Now, I'm hoping the referees don't have nothing to do with this and kind of make this game a laugher because a lot of people was pissed with that Texans game. I still feel like with this game, Josh Allen has to come out and play, click on all cylinders, don't make any excuses, and put the team on his back like he did when they played each other earlier in the year and when they pulled off that game. It was on the 4th and 2 when he got that 20-yard touchdown. He needs to go outside the script at sometimes. Yeah, focus on the game plan and what you guys have going on. But if you could do some Superman heroics, you need to go outside the box and you need to go ahead and do that and execute at a high level. You can't get any picks and can't do anything that'll help the Kansas City Chiefs with this game. Like I said, they're at home and they're a 1 point favorite. I usually don't pick against the Chiefs, and this would mess up my whole Super Bowl situation right now. But I'm going to go with the Buffalo Bills on the road. And I'm hoping the refs, like I said, don't determine this game by some of the poor calls and the poor officiating that they've been doing as of late. But yeah, I'll take the Buffalo Bills on the road right now. I know that makes me a hypocrite because I had at least Kansas City still survive it and who I think was going to go in the Super Bowl. But I really think that this is Josh Allen's year because you're the only thing in between Kansas City Chiefs and Patrick Mahomes getting a three-peat. A lot of people talked to me, and I was hearing a lot of noise in my ear on both sides saying the refs wanted this, man, and the NFL wanted them to get a three-peat. Well, Josh Allen, you got to do something about it. And I don't really say 100% the refs, but I will definitely talk about those stats and what I was telling you guys. But yeah, I'm definitely going to go with the Bills, and I'll take them, and I'll take them as the 1 point favorite. I want to move on now, and I want to talk about some of those stats that I was telling you too, because this is pretty interesting. When I didn't believe a lot of things that was being said, and now I looked into it myself and kind of checked into some of the stats of what was going on the stat sheets, and I started seeing some of the things that a lot of people were the anti-Patrick Mahomes fans were talking about. I want to start off by saying each of the Los Angeles Rams' last 4 playoff games have been decided by 3 or fewer points. That's the longest such streak in NFL postseason history. The Rams are the only NFL team in the Super Bowl era to have 80-plus yards worth of sacks and a fumble return touchdown off of the sack in the same game, regular or postseason. Before the season, no 14-plus win NFL team had ever had its season end with back-to-back losses by any amount. The Vikings lost their last 2 games this season by a combined 40 points. On January 13, 2025, the Buffalo Bills had their 5th home game this season, including playoffs with 20-plus scoring margin and 0 turnovers. That is the most such home games for any NFL team in a single campaign, including postseason. Travis Kelce of the Kansas City Chiefs had at least 5 receptions in 14 consecutive playoff games, the longest streak in NFL history. Congratulations, Travis Kelce. January the 18th, 2025 was the Chiefs' 12th win by a single digit this season. That is the most such wins in a single season by any team in NFL history, regular season or playoffs. Matthew Stafford has thrown for multi touchdowns and completed at least 65% of his passes in each of his last six postseason starts. His streak is tied with Patrick Mahomes between 2021 and 2022 playoffs for the longest in NFL playoff history. Keep doing your thing, Matthew Stafford. Saquon Barkley is the first player in NFL history with four rushing touchdowns of 60 plus yards against a single opponent in his entire career, including playoffs. All four of his touchdowns came two games versus the Rams in this season. The Ravens are the first NFL team in history to rush for 170 plus yards, complete 70% of their passing, average 10 plus yards per pass, convert 70% of their third downs, had no punts or missed field goals, all in the same game, regular and postseason. They still ended up losing. So let that, sink in. These are some of the stats I was saying when I wanted you guys to say, are the referees really looking out for Patrick Mahomes or are they not looking out for Patrick Mahomes? These were some of the stats that I looked at because I was curious about people saying that, it's the Kansas City Chiefs and the refs are the ones who's going to be the three-peat champions. The Chiefs quarterback has thrown 22 interceptions, including week 2 against the Bengals, that have been called back in his career, coupled with 8 fumbles with the same result. That is a total of 30 turnovers that a penalty on the defense has been called. Patrick Mahomes overturned turnovers. 2018, he had an interception plus 2 fumbles. That's 3. 2019, he had 6 interceptions and 3 fumbles. That's 9. 2020, he had 4 interceptions and a fumble. 5. 2021, he had 3 interceptions and a fumble. That's 4. And in 2022, he had 4 interceptions with no fumbles. 2023, he had 3 interceptions and a fumble that all been called back. That's 21 interceptions plus 8 fumbles. It's 29. The drive results after overturning penalties on interceptions. He had 2 field goals, 9 touchdowns, 5 punts, and that's turnovers and turnover on downs or the end of games. On fumbles, he had 3 field goals made, 4 touchdowns, a punt, and a total of 5 field goals, 13 touchdowns, 6 punts, and 3 turnovers. Turnovers overturned type by reasons, meaning pass interference, roughing the passer, etc. Interceptions, he had defensive offsides, 7. Calls reverse, 5. Defensive pass interference, 3. Illegal contact, 2. Illegal use of hands, he didn't have any on that. They can't give him credit for that. Defensive holding, 2. Offset penalties, 1. And roughing the passers, 1. Fumbles, defensive offsides, 2. Calls reverse because of, who knows? Most times when they call reverse, it'd probably be, that they overturn it because both sides had penalties. But he had 2 on that as well. None on defensive pass interference or illegal contact. But illegal use of hands, they gave him 2. Defensive holding, 1. Offset penalties. I'm surprised it's only 1. I thought it was more than that. And roughing the passer, 0. But that's a total of 9 defensive offsides, 7 calls reverse, 3 defensive pass interference, 2 illegal contact, 2 illegal use of hands, 3 defensive holding, 2 offsetting penalties, and 1 roughing the passer. I don't really get off into that, but a lot of people are starting to look at it and they're starting to hate the Kansas City Chiefs because I told my buddy Buck too. I said, man, when they start winning, people are going to start hating him. He's going to be like the Tom Brady of the NFL. And that's starting to materialize now because all these things that I'm looking at right now, and I was reading stat-wise, and where people are feeling like it's a theory why they want the Kansas City Chiefs to repeat. with some of the same things that happened with Tom Brady, But I think Brady's not here that you can hate now because he's a broadcaster, half owner or partial owner. So now that's where all the energy is going to. So yeah, man, I want to know y'all thoughts. You can leave it on the comments. But yeah, man, it looked like we got a little something brewing here, but I don't want to get into all that because I still feel like, unfortunately, I've talked to a few people, my buddy June, and he was telling me he still feel like every sport has some type of gambling and favoritism in it. So that being said, I would like to say thank you all for chiming in to another episode of the Guru Perspective. And you can catch me at Hoovy on Instagram, Sports Guru to you on Facebook. Right now, I don't really know what's going on with my TikTok page. It's been acting funny, but it is Hugh.Lee6. Hopefully that can get back up and running. And then, of course, you can call me at or email me at sportsguru@gmail.com if you want to ask me anything to put on the show, any comments or anything you want me to put out there. And of course, the Guru Perspective every Tuesday at 1 p.m. And you can catch me on the Guru Sports Session at 9 p.m. every Wednesday. Thank you all for listening. I appreciate it. And like I said, love you all. Thank you for making my dream a reality. Until the next episode. See you soon.